On top of spaghetti, all covered in cheese. I lost my poor meatball when somebody sneezed. It rolled off the table and onto the floor. And then my poor meatball rolled out the door. New dawn, Sabre season ends, a new era begins. We'll talk about that after this intro. What's up and welcome to the Sabres Edge podcast presented by Nickel City Mafia. My name is Top Shelf Timmy Corks and my co-host is Sammy Saucy Mitts. Sammy, what's going on? How was your week?
I think my week was going pretty well. I mean, as well as it could with what's been going on with the Sabres until I heard that little poem of yours. How long did you have that planned out for?
5 minutes before the show.
All right, that's fine. It was amusing. I appreciate that. I'll give you that much. But yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Just ate about a pound of spaghetti carbonara, so that's fueling me. I'm feeling great.
Fitting for the song. How did I know?
I mean, no meatballs on that spaghetti, but
oh well, fitting.
How are you doing, Timmy?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been sunny and 60 up here in Portland, so. Took my dog for a walk on the beach after I got out of work and then went for a nice run. So, trying to soak in as much sun as possible before it starts raining again up here. So, I'm enjoying everything. So, I mean, we had some big news today. Don Granato was relieved of his duties from the Buffalo Sabres, along with two assistant coaches, video coordinator and then assistant coach. Mike Smith was one, and who was the other?
Mike Smith was the video coordinator, and Jason Christie was fired.
Yeah. I mean, we still got Matt Ellis, who I think was the biggest target of most of Sabres fans this year.
I think the common understanding, though, is that Matt Ellis's contract will have expired at the end of the year, and so they don't need to fire him. They just won't be re-signing him. Obviously, I'm not entirely sure that is true. I'm not sure that anyone who's talking about it knows that it's true, but that is the current speculation going on, that Matt Ellis will not be returning next year, nor will probably most of the Sabres coaching staff. I don't know after Matt Ellis, who is even left, but...
was it Mike Bales, the goalie coach?
Mike Bales is still around. So
I think they would keep. I mean, obviously, depending on the next head coach, if they'll keep him, it might stick around. But yeah. And then I think I mentioned in our Discord, we'll get into it, but I'm assuming they want to keep guys like Matt Ellis in the organization too, probably in development role type of thing. But anyways, with the big news today, Don Granato left. Sam, what are your thoughts?
I think it was exactly 1 week ago today we were talking about what is the percentage likelihood that we think that Don Granato gets fired. And we were both like, it's probably only 30% chance and we're not going to hear about it right away. And then earlier in the week, the Buffalo Sabres released something saying that they were going to have a press conference on Friday, I believe, that would include Coach Don Granato and Kevin Adams. And so everyone was like, okay, well, that sounds like they're gearing up to run it back with both those guys. And so at that point, I was like, well, shit, we have Don Granato again for another year. And so for me, it was relief. Again, I don't think that when Don Granato came into the organization that he was the wrong hire. In fact, quite the opposite. I think he served his purpose for the time being, he's in my eyes, he's more of a developmental coach, and we had an inexperienced team. We were gearing up towards the future with getting rid of Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart and Rasmus Ristolainen, and it worked for some players. You had Tage Thompson really jumping off and getting his career kind of into motion, whereas before Don Granato being head coach, Tage Thompson was a AHLer. I don't even think he was a tweener. I think he was an AHLer.
Yep.
And you had guys like Mitz figured it out under Granato. You had Dahlin got his game back under Granato. Maybe he figured it out, because I am not sure if he ever really had it fully before Kruger, but Kruger definitely didn't help. You see Jeff Skinner. You see Alex Tuck had career years. I think Don Granato was perfect for the time being. And as time went on, as expectations grew, as we needed the team to play a system and play together to get into a playoff spot, we no longer needed a developmental coach. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful that we got Don when he did. He was the right piece. I'm relieved that we didn't hang on to him for next year, because it was clear after this year that it was no longer the right piece. Now we need someone who says, hey, you got these talented players. You got some guys who are on their feet and know how to score in this league. Now let's make you play as a team. How do you win the game of hockey? Not how do you score goals, not how do you make the fanciest plays. How do you win the game of hockey? How do you make it to the playoffs? And eventually, how do you win a Stanley Cup? And Don Granato was not that guy. And he was not surrounding himself with people who are going to put in those systems where he might not have been able to. So he moved on. And that was absolutely the right thing. So it's not elation that I'm feeling. It's relief. I'm glad that we did it. I'm glad that Kevyn Adams took that step, because we weren't sure that he was going to. And yeah, I'm just relieved.
Do you know how you get a team to work together? One goal song.
I was thinking about it, right? And I guess it makes sense. So after 13 years, for anyone to still be a Sabres fan, they have to be some sort of a masochist. And you know what? It makes sense. You're still here. You want one goal song. You don't like fun. We get it. It makes sense. Yeah.
Cheers, Mike.
you're that. You guys are both masochists. But I guess, anyone who's still watching this is too. So welcome to the show.
I mean, we have checked the comments on our past show, and even that short
I know.
3-0 right now against the Sam.
Yeah, no one likes fun. It's crazy.
Anyways, no, you put it correct. I mean, I think I said last show, if I would have saw Don Granato as the head coach of this team next year, I probably was done as a Sabres fan. #done. So, I mean, you said it right. With Granato coming in, he was the right coach at the time and instilled a lot of confidence in players who were lacking confidence. You mentioned Jeff Skinner, you mentioned Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin. I don't know. Yoki Hari wasn't on the team at that point either, but
Yoki Hari was.
He was? Okay. Yeah. So, he was able to build confidence. A lot of players that didn't have confidence and didn't realize their footing in the NHL at all. So, I appreciate that. Don Granato, I think we said this multiple times. Great coach, great guy, great developmental coach. But as we mentioned before, he's just not going to take this team to the next step. And the biggest thing is accountability that this team needs. And that was the word that Kevyn Adams made clear in his press conference today, is that the team lacked accountability. And the team lacked a focus and a system just through the coaching staff. And it was, what he said today was reassuring as a GM, because when we were hearing him throughout the year, he had he's backing Granato throughout the whole entire season. And I think he talked about that. He said, I wasn't going to fire the coach midseason. What good was that going to do? And I think we both you and I talked about that, because who are they going to bring in at that time to help out this team? some people were saying Seth Appert, and I swear to God, Sam, I didn't take this as a takeaway from the press conference today, but if Seth Appert is the head coach of this team, I might as well. The show's done. We're done.
Nah, okay. He talked about Seth during the press conference.
Yeah.
And it does not sound like Seth Appert will be the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the next head coach gets pressured into bringing Seth along as a assistant coach, because they were talking about maybe the attention that Seth might be getting around the league from other teams who might be looking to hire a coach. And yeah, Kevin made it very clear that he wanted a coach that has been in the NHL, that has a track record, a proven track record, and that can help us win games and install a system. Like you said, have accountability too. So you're not going to see, most likely, unless he goes back on his word, you're not going to see a first-time head coach. So you're not going to see Seth Appert. So we can all breathe a sigh of relief. We're going to see someone who, like most of us have been asking for, has actually been a head coach in the league before. We've been saying it for several shows now. Anytime that the coaching conversation comes up, we do not want another first-year head coach. And I think that Kevin did a good job of instilling the thought that that's not going to happen again. That's not what's coming up for us on the horizon. So presumably good things to look forward to.
Yeah. And he has someone in mind that he wants to be a head coach. So, and a lot of people are speculating, like Jeff Lombardo was mentioning, Lindy Ruff as a guy. I know we've talked about a little bit, Sam. What are you thinking? What are you thinking about Ruff?
I think that Ruff would be a pretty good coach. He didn't have the greatest tenure in New Jersey, getting fired this year because, similar to our team, their team had a bit of a falling off from where they were last year.
Yeah.
Theirs was worse than ours. So, as far as regression goes, we're not looking to regress any further. So maybe that's not ideal. But he did have a very good year the year before that with those same Devils. So his most recent couple of years are up and down. But he's got the history with the Sabres. He's got the history being a head coach. I don't dislike the idea. And if they announced that it was Ruff, I would not be upset. But I do think that I'm definitely willing to hear out other options and maybe put some above Ruff.
Yeah.
But if it were Ruff, I wouldn't be upset.
No, it's understandable, the nostalgia factor with Ruff too, just with Buffalo and how long he was a coach here. And I think Joe DiBiase for WGR brought up a good fact too, is that Ruff is able to, kind of like groom his coach or his coaching style into the type of players that he has. He's good at that. He doesn't, back when he coached the Sabres in the 90s and early 2000s, where you had Dominic Hasek as your best team, they were a defensive team, low scoring team, and they got to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you kind of saw that when he was in Dallas too, like not a big scoring team, but played well defensively. But then you see him in the 05 through 07 run with the Sabres, highly offensive team, pretty solid defensively. You had Ryan Miller in net, so that helps out as well. But in New Jersey too, so he's a guy that's willing to change up his coaching style to suit the team that he plays with, and that's kind of makes him marketable. I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't mind Ruff coming back, but there are options out there, and I'm sure we'll get into that later with some other coaches that we're talking about. But I want to hear some other people out too, as well. Like you mentioned, I want to see some other faces and get some, because I'll be honest with you, I've kind of looked into the coaching, but I haven't done a deep dive in it right now. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
I haven't either.
Yeah, so we'll figure out some guys.
We're gonna have to do a whole episode where we just dive into all the coaching options, every single former head coach that is currently alive and not hired by a team.
Yeah, like I can name names right now, but I can't remember. Some guys have been out of the league for a while. I'm like, I don't know if I want them to be coaches. So anyways, But to go back to the Kevin Adams press conference too, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing from the players. I believe it's tomorrow and Thursday, so we'll talk about that next week about the players' postseason press conferences. I kind of like what Kevin Adams mentioned is young is not an excuse anymore. This team is not young. It's youthful in age, but they have veteran players at this time, and it can't be an excuse for this team anymore. And I'll say with Kevin Adams, basically confirmed the way everyone was thinking throughout this whole entire season that, the players mentioning that their youth, the coach mentioning using their youth as an excuse. I think he was growing sick of that. And the biggest thing too, like we're all harping on too, is accountability, and everything that he said throughout that press conference. I mean, it instilled confidence in me as a fan of this team going forward, and what he's looking for in going into this next search, and even this off season too, because there's a lot of questions going to the off season. We'll talk about this more about what they're going to do with their bottom six and how they're going to shuffle up their top six. Because at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of people, speculate that the Sabres aren't a destination for any big time names for coaching, but you see these past 3 games and the way that the Sabres can play, especially with the Lightning the other night. They have the skill to compete with anybody. They have the players to compete with anybody. Shoot, you look at the Quinn and Benson lineup right now as your second pairing, and those 2 guys can make any line better. And both those guys are still really young and still can grow into their game. So, and you have probably you have a future, probably the best goaltender pairing in the next 2 to 3 years with Devin Levi, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. So I think there's a lot of options for the Sabres going forward. And if they can get a notable coach in here, that's going to bring in free agents too. So I'm kind of looking forward to this offseason, kind of seeing who they're going to bring in as coach and, how is Kevin Adams going to round out, especially the bottom 6 and, what type of players he wants to bring in. Was there anything else that you took away from the press conference at all with Kevin Adams?
From Kevin Adams, I think that it was just kind of what you said, that he's willing to, in this press conference, take the accountability into his own hands. It was cool to see him be like, yeah, this is like my problem and the players' problems. Like he was talking, he got into specifics like about Dylan Cousins and Tage Thompson when asked about it. Like instead of just skirting those questions and being like, it happens. Yeah. Moving on, right? He talked about how if a team that he's running isn't playing well, it's also a reflection on him and that he's going to be doing whatever he can. Like he's putting the onus on himself and not just deflecting. And he's talking about specific things. Like he, for me, has inspired confidence that he knows what he's doing. He's trying to do it the right way. And I've talked about it before throughout the season where he's made moves for us that even the ones that haven't worked out at the time, I still think look like they were good ideas. And so as a hockey fan, just seeing all of that and given the limitations of, like you were talking about with destination, like we're not a destination for any player in the NHL right now. We haven't made the playoffs in 13 years. We have New York tax rates. We're cold. We're a small city. And it's just this is the last place that really any player would want to be. I'm sure that we are on every single no trade list in the NHL right now. And until we make the playoffs or prove that we have a very competent team, that's not going to change. I do think that limits what Kevin Adams can do. So you see him bring in a guy like Eric Comrie, and on paper, that's a great move. I think that looked great. He was a fantastic goalie behind the Jets goalie. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. Connor Hellebuck. So he had limited sample size, but in the amount that he played, he had like a 932 one year. Like he was insanely good. Everything was showing that maybe he was ready to take the next step, and it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame Kevin for that, because you're not going to in his position, in Buffalo's position, be able to go out and get a kind of marquee goalie without having to pay ridiculous amounts for them. So I think that for now, I'm going to continue to put my faith that Kevin Adams will be improving the team going forward.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm watching some Sabres highlights right now. No, and no, that press conference, answered a lot of questions I think a lot of fans and reporters had for Kevin Adams too. And it's understandable when he was asked throughout the season, specifically on players and coaching, why he's kind of just deflecting any of those questions, just because it's hard to do that in the middle of the season because, you want to still instill confidence in these guys. You don't want to rip them apart. I mean, a lot of people are still talking up Tortorella at this point as well. And you kind of see how this is going. I know a lot of people, I as much as a lot of people, and I've, hammered the door for Tortorella earlier in the season, he's just not going to be a fit for this type of team just because this team doesn't react in the way that Tortorella wanted to. And, they need a coach that's going to understand that. And that's where my comments saying, like, Kevin Adams isn't going to harp on this team in the middle of the season. Postseason, maybe he'll take a couple more shots, but that's understandable to keep it in-house at that point of the year. But anyways, we had some other news. We had some games, and then we also had some news about, what we were talking about last week. So Darlene is going to be going into Worlds. And then, unfortunately, Tage Thompson, who wanted to do the Worlds, cannot go because of injury. Have they talked about his injury at all? I didn't know. I didn't read too much.
Yeah, they said basically that he will not be going to Worlds because of the injury, but it will not really hamper his summer training because it would have been like week to week.
Yeah.
If he were still playing. So that's enough to cover, going to Worlds, but realistically, he should be kind of okay by the time that it concludes.
Okay.
So
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
But he's had an injury. I know last week I was talking about these guys should be playing in these Worlds games, but there's some guys like Thompson who's been injured throughout the whole entire season. Who knows what happened? Where his wrist is at. Maybe for him taking a little bit of a break, and because honestly, I know we're going to talk over our 3 stars, but he's one of the bigger disappointments throughout this season as well. So to recoup his game, maybe take a break this offseason, figure out what's going on in your game, watch some tape. Your dad's a coach for, I think, the Anaheim Ducks, right? So
yep.
Maybe work with him a little bit, figure out what's going on as well. And that's pretty much all the news that we have so far for Sabres players joining the Worlds right now, right? We haven't heard anything about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or
no, we have not heard anything from any of those guys, but I'm sure in the coming weeks we will get a lot of updates and notifications because I would imagine that a fair amount of those players are going to be making their way to the Worlds.
Yeah. Anyways, so I'm sure we'll update you next week with more guys going on the Worlds and some coaching stuff. But we did have some games this past week that close out the season. We'll go over those. So, Sabres played Washington this past Thursday and won 4-2 in that game. Then on Saturday, they faced the Florida Panthers, and they lost 3-2 in overtime with that game. So they got a loser point out of there, one of their few this year. And then they also had a win against Tampa Bay, 4-2, which they ended with Comrie finishing up the season kind of like a hat tip to him. I mean, that was a good gesture on the coaching staff's point to give Comrie a game this year. So, Sam, any thoughts taken away from those games at all?
I mean, by the time we were going into those games, there were no more playoff hopes.
Yeah.
I was amused. I found it funny that we beat the Capitals because that now, as we're moving into the final games of the season, are seeing that could matter for them. So, a little bit of just the pettiness inside of me was like, this is funny. But, we played well against a team that was still fighting for their lives. And we came out the victors. it's frustrating in a way because you know that this team has it in them. They do not perform night in, night out. You get this inconsistent team every single game, every single period. It's a different team. But they played well against the Capitals, and the Capitals really needed that one. So that's maybe you can take that energy and bring it into the next year. The Panthers game, obviously, that was one that we had circled a few weeks ago. It's like that's going to be one of those harder ones to win. They actually played pretty well. They take it into overtime. Obviously, it's hard to tell how hard the Panthers team this late in the season is actually trying, but you take it into overtime. I think we got scored on, or they had like a power play in overtime that we actually killed off. And then ultimately Sam Reinhart scores on us. So like good for him. If anyone on that Florida team, which I really don't like, is going to score on us and, end the game, may as well be Sam Reinhart because I do like that guy. And then the Lightning game, again, we looked good. I hate it. I hate that we looked good. I hate that they come out when it doesn't matter and show what they're worth. It's a little too late, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, like, whatever. These last 3 games, we didn't have anything to play for. Maybe that helped. Maybe that's when Don Granato and his coaching style thrive. Good thing we don't have to worry about that anymore,
It's amazing because the last 3 teams are fighting for that last wild card spot. I mean, Washington, the past 3 games that we faced them, the Sabres were the better team every one of those games. Then you look at Detroit. I mean, the Sabres on paper are a better team, and they just didn't show up to any of those games that they faced Detroit. And then Pittsburgh. I mean, Sabres beat them a couple times this season too. Old and slow as Pittsburgh. I mean, they're trying to squeak in. And they're kind of relying on some losses by Detroit and Washington right now. And then you got Philadelphia ahead of them. The Sabres were better than all those teams right now. And if they would have pulled off some, at least just, we were mentioning last week, got some loser points throughout the season, brought some games to overtime, we were saying they would have been a 90-point team. So it's a tough season just because, like you were mentioning, and we said before, this team, I think it had 95 goals in the first period throughout the whole entire season. In just the first period alone, 95 goals. That's not a coach. I mean, that's a coaching thing because you're not bringing the team to be ready for a game. So, like I said, hopefully next season, whoever the coach is going to be next year, it's going to help out the team. You're making a face that I read a stat wrong on the first period.
The 95 goals feels a little bit high. For our goal total, we were only at 246. So 95 in the first period feels high because if you had 95 in each period, you'd be just shy of 300.
For against them, the goal differential.
Oh, you said we had 95 goals in the first period.
Sorry, 95. I might have said 95 goals against us in the first period. My bad.
That would make more sense.
Yeah. Sorry. We're minus 95 in the first period for goals. So, no, yeah. So, like you said, those last 4 teams, I mean, I think Philadelphia's out of it, right? They have like the Sabres chances back like 2 weeks ago, like that 0.07%. Pittsburgh's still around with 88. I mean, that's tough. It's tough watching those teams because they're not better than the Sabres on paper when it comes to skill wise.
Yeah.
And even goaltender.
This playoff race, this final push to the wild card spot is the absolute toilet bowl of the league.
Yeah.
It's the combined plus minus of the remaining teams is like it's minus roughly 60. It's terrible collection of teams left.
I mean,
and we're worse than them apparently because we couldn't find any amount of consistency. Our top end is better than the top end of any of those teams, and I am comfortable saying that.
100%. 100%. There is so much skill on this team, and you have better goaltending too than all of those teams as well. That the fact that the Sabres just couldn't put it together this year is just, I mean, this is why this season hurt. So, anyways, not to harp on anything more about the season. I mean, yeah, I had the same takeaways from you when it comes to those games. Sabres showed up to play finally when games don't count. So,
Yeah.
thanks again, guys. Appreciate it. Let's make games count throughout the whole entire season next year. So,
Yeah.
hopefully the coach brings it after that. So we're gonna kind of switch it up a little bit here. We're gonna do the 3 stars for the season before we start getting into like we'll talk about coaches and kind of like the future of the show going forward after this. After we do our 3 stars for the season. So Sam, who do you have as your 3 stars for the season? I think I know 2 of them.
Yeah, I think 2 of them are pretty self-explanatory, so I'll start with those 2. The first, the heart and soul of the team, the stalwart on defense, Rasmus Dahlin. You take my first star of the year. You did everything right. What more can you ask from a guy? I believe he ended the season with the most points on our team as a defenseman. That's hard to do, especially when defensemen get most of their points from assists. And our offense wasn't really scoring. So, Rasmus Dahlin, you held everything together in key moments. You play that physical game. You put up points. You are the complete player that we've needed for a while. He had an excellent year, and I'm sure nationally it's gone under the radar. Yeah. So, yeah, you're not being overlooked here. We love you. We're glad to have you on board. Thank you, Rasmus, for the year.
Another thing too, real quick, just want to add because he's on my 3 star too. Only as -3 was playing 30 minutes a night too for a stretch for over a month. So
yeah, on a bad team, like
yeah,
that's I mean, ultimately our goal differential was +2. So
yeah,
but yeah, there were some rough stretches in there, and some of those rough stretches involved Rasmus Dahlin having to play 30 minutes a night due to injuries. There was a game where we played with only 4 defensemen. So he's really been important to the structure of this team.
As advertised, 20 goals, 39 assists. So appreciate you. Played hard throughout the season too. Can't say that about many players out there. I don't think did he really even have he never really had a dip.
No, I think there was a little bit of a slow start, maybe, but once he kind of ramped it up, he was back to the elite player that we know he can be, and I don't think he ever really looked back. There are some nights where he maybe got a little criticism for looking sluggish or slow, and to that I say it's because that the past night on a back-to-back he was playing 30 minutes. Yeah. Like that happens when the guy's playing half the game consistently for 3 weeks straight.
Yeah.
So
agree.
Moving on, my second star of the year is gotta be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. This is a guy who going into the year did not really have a path forward, did not really have a job. He was kind of an odd man looking in, with the goalies being a 3-way rotation, with the main goalie being Devin Levi, and then kind of a rotation between the other 2 goalies, and quickly cemented himself as the number 1 goalie, which we haven't had in years. He played 54 games this year for us, won 20 or head starts at the 51 counter, won 27, lost 22, and went into OT for 4, or lost an OT for 4. Sorry if I said that weird. But either way, he won more games than he lost, which I think he's the only goalie we can say that of. He's .910 on the season for save percentage and 2.57 goals against average. He became a number 1 goalie in the NHL for a year, and we've been missing that. Between Eric Comrie of the past few years not being what we had hoped he could be, Devin Levi not being able to jump right into the NHL. The year before that, we had Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who was clearly too young, was not ready for the league, and I forget who else was there, but
Was it Craig Anderson?
Craig Anderson. Yeah, you're correct.
And he was coming off a double hip surgery too at that point as well.
Yeah, so it's helpful to know that you have security in net. It's helpful to know every game that even if you don't play your best, you have someone behind you who can still steal the game for you. And this year, that was Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. There were games we had no business being in, and lo and behold, we were right there, and it was off the hand of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. So thank you for making us competitive, because without you, it would have been the Eric Comrie show, and that would have been embarrassing. We would not even be talking about how frustrating it is at the end to be winning those games, because we would have been frustrated about winning them because we're not getting, or we're putting ourselves further out of the lottery. This would absolutely be a lottery team under Eric Comrie's rule. But
yeah.
So, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, hats off to you. May you continue to grow better. And if this was as good as you get, that's fine too. You were a number one NHL goalie this year, so it's all we can ask of you.
Do you remember what you asked for at the beginning of the season from our goaltenders to get us into the playoffs?
Probably a 910 save percentage.
You only said a 900 save percentage, so he bested you by 10.010. Yeah.
He had 5 shutouts too, like that. He had a good year. He had a really good year.
Do you think he can be in the talk for Vezina at all?
If we made the playoffs, he would have been my de facto pick for Vezina winner, because we did not put together a good product on the ice.
No.
And there were many nights where he was the only thing holding it together.
Yeah.
So I would have picked him if we made the playoffs. I would have maybe started getting into sports betting just to make that bet, because I still think he would have been a dark horse. But I don't think with the miss of the playoffs that he'll be really receiving any attention.
I wonder who's like do you have an idea who the favorite is for Vezina at all this year?
I believe that it's Hellebuck.
That's kind of what I was thinking, because I can't really think of any goaltenders that really stood out besides that.
UC Saros has been playing well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Is there really anyone else who's been? Demko. Thatcher Demko.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I was kind of looking at like Sorokin too. I'm like, I mean, they're having
every year that the Islanders make the playoffs, Ilya Sorokin needs to be in the conversation. That roster is not good. I'm just going to say it right now. That is a very bad roster. Even to be in the playoffs, I would not trade rosters with them right now.
Minus 18 goal differential for that team too. So if that shows anything,
it's so frustrating. It is so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get off of that subject. But thank you, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Who's your third?
There's a lot of people that I could say for my third star, and probably a lot of bad opinions I could throw around. And so I'm going to throw around a bad opinion. Because my third star for the season, now that I can look back at it more nostalgically than frustratedly, is going to go to Don Granato. Now that he's fired, I just don't care anymore. Like I said at the start of the show when we were talking about the coaches, he was the right guy. For the transition that we were in, he was absolutely the right guy, and we're getting rid of him, so now I don't have to worry about it. I still think that he holds value in, this year, we saw Jordan Greenway get his game. We saw Zach Benson come in and improve. He still does development well for individuals, even if it's not cohesive as a team. Connor Clifton really found his game after after a bit of a slow start. Henry Jokiharju is looking like he's going to be kind of a bona fide second pair defenseman for the foreseeable future. I appreciate what he did, and I think that he's setting up the next coach for a very long run of success. And to be honest with you, I also just don't really have anyone else for like a third star of the season. I could maybe give it to like Jordan Greenway. I think he's looked pretty good, pretty consistent throughout the year. He's as advertised. He's a fourth line player, defends well. Maybe he's going to give you a little more offensive production than most fourth line players. So he's someone you could throw in there. JJ Peterka, he's developing well, but I don't think that, as it currently stands, he's an instrumental part of the team. He's definitely good at goal scoring, but you can see kind of the deficiencies that he still has and needs to round out his game with. Yeah, so 3 stars of the season. Now that Don Granato is officially fired, I actually do think that he's been the right man for the job and is no longer. And so I'm content with how it's all kind of settled.
I mean, I was kind of on the same boat from you, as in I couldn't have picked out a third star because my first 2 stars are the same as you. But
well, that's why we start throwing bad opinions out there.
And then Don Granato was never gonna cross my mind.
No.
But hey, I pushed your buttons last week with that 1 goal song. I'm not falling for this. And then Mike, I was just gonna bring that up, Mike. So Alex Tuck. He was actually tied Rasmus Dahlin with 59 points. So slowest start off to the season, 22 goals, 37 assists, 59 points. I mean, he had a quietly decent season. I mean, I don't know. He never really stood out to me as a player throughout the year where I was just like, oh, yeah, this guy's dominating the game. He was way too – I don't even think he ever got hot. It was just cold and mediocre. So, anyways, he's not my third star. You did mention my third star, and this is only because of development as JJ Peterka, because he's the only guy that had a trajectory upwards on the forwards this season. 28 goals. Would have been nice to see him hit 30. 22 assists, 50 points overall, plus minus, I don't really care, plus 10. Doesn't matter for forwards. I don't think so. You're not playing that much time. That's pretty much the reason why I chose him, because he was the only guy of all the forwards, minus one other player, that had like a significant trajectory upwards. And I think if Quinn would have played the full season healthy, or even just came back from his Achilles injury and never got injured again, we might have been talking about him, to be honest with you, with the way that he was playing towards the end of the season. But no, JJ Peterka, I mean, you kind of win it by default for the third star. I mean, you grew. You're a goal scorer. Hopefully you grow other parts of your games as well. But it's nice to see from him not having a sophomore slump that you see out of some of these other players. Own power. So, anyways, that was going to be my third star. I do have an honorable mention though. And I mean, I guess it's kind of out there because he was a rookie. Zach Benson. 11 goals, 19 assists, 30 points. Drafted 13th overall. No one was going to think he's going to make the NHL this year. 5'10", 170 pounds. He lived beyond the expectations that I kind of had for this season. I think we've talked about this multiple times. He wasn't a Connor Bedard type of player, but I think overall he might have had a better season than Leo Carlsson and Fantilli, the second and third overall picks in this past draft too, that are playing up in the NHL. So, and he played a style of hockey that wasn't common for the Sabres. He got it in the dirty areas. He fought for pucks. He got in front of the net, tried to score dirty goals. Had some nice highlight goals, too. I think he had the best highlight goals of anybody this season as well.
I think he also has, in the NHL, maybe the best first career goal
Yeah.
just ever.
Mm-hmm.
That was still remember it was against the Washington Capitals very early in the season. Does the between the legs move. Just there's no where do you get the confidence as literally a kid in
Yeah.
in that league? You're 2 feet shorter than everyone else. You're so like
Small.
yeah, you have to worry about being absolutely clobbered for doing that. But yeah, that's a level of confidence we can only hope to achieve.
And I mean, he never lacked it throughout the whole entire season too. When he was bouncing between lines, second. I don't think he ever dropped down to the fourth line, but between second and third line, he played up on the first line too. The one other thing that kind of I'll remember about Benson this season is there was a fight going along the Sabres bench, and a Sabres player, and then I forgot who the other team, but whatever, the opposing team's player were jawing at each other. And then Benson was on the bench in between the jawing players and was sticking his stick in the other player's face and wiggling it around. And then Don Granato comes charging over, pull him back and tell him to stop, kind of like scolded him. So
I think that there was a penalty that we needed to serve because there was a player got ejected and Don sent Benson in as punishment.
Yeah. I mean, guy was having some fun. So
yeah, he's enjoying it. So good to have him here. And like you said, he plays a different style of hockey than what we have on the team. And that's helpful to have that variety so you can mix and match these play styles and create different dynamics. I said it earlier in the season, he kind of plays like Jeff Skinner, but as you watch him more, he plays like what Jeff Skinner wishes he could be. He's willing to go into those grittier areas. He's willing to stand in front of the net. Jeff Skinner scores in tight very well, but also doesn't like being in those kind of dirty areas. He does not like taking the contact in front of the net, which is required to score those in tight goals that he's so good at. He kind of drifts in, which he does like those little drive-bys, which drive people insane. I know there's a lot of crash the net in the fan base on the power play, on just offensive zone possessions, and people are going insane about why don't we crash the net? Jeff Skinner is probably the most guilty party of that because he does those drive-bys so often where he's hoping you shoot it at the perfect time for him to be just like swooping in and kind of cleaning up. Zach Benson is Jeff Skinner if he would just stay there. And the other thing that Zach Benson does that sets him apart from Leo Carlson and Adam Fantilli is his defensive game is incredibly mature. Of all of the, I think there was only 4 players in the draft class that played this year. Pick number 1, pick number 2, pick number 3, and pick number 13. Zach Benson was the only one, I believe, that was doing penalty kill throughout the year.
Yeah.
He already has a very well-rounded game for an 18-year-old. You can put him on the penalty kill or the power play and get good results. He played in the bumper spot for the power play and he was creating offense. I believe there was a Jeff Skinner goal actually where it was kind of bumped through Zach Benson in the middle, and I was screaming at the TV, we finally used the bumper spot, because that was something I was complaining about earlier. We're not like that's been kind of the issue for us. We don't use the middle of the ice well, and Zach Benson, he's willing to go there and he's willing to get back when he gets stuck up forward. Really happy with the way that he's played this year, and 30 points is just to top that off for an 18-year-old. You can't really go wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, overall had a great season, and I know plus minus is not a stat that you want to go to, but I mean, Connor Bedard, 60 points, but minus 41.
Okay, but that is
terrible Chicago Blackhawks team.
Again. Plus minus. Say it with me, everyone. Plus minus is a team stat, and so it's only helpful for looking at players on the same team to see how they're doing relative to each other. You cannot.
I'm just trying to get a win over Connor Bedard here.
Connor Bedard's plus minus to. You cannot compare anyone on the Blackhawks plus minus to anyone on our team because that's an unfair comparison. The Chicago Bedards are currently sitting with a minus 108 goal differential. We are +2. It's no wonder. Like, you're not going to have. No one on that team has a better plus minus than anybody on our team. I can almost guarantee you.
Oh yeah, I just want to get a win over Bedard on there for the rookie stats. I know it doesn't. It's not.
No, that's fair.
It's a cheap shot, but
I also take any win we can get over Bedard. But that is quite the cheap shot.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to the bottom of the barrel right now trying to get points, but yeah. Anyways, so yeah. Did you have any honorable mentions at all for the season?
I mean, I already brought up mine, which were kind of Jordan Greenway.
Yeah.
I talked about him. He brings the defensive game that he's the fourth liner of the future that you want. Like, obviously, fourth line is kind of a plug and play kind of thing. You can get anyone. There's a lot of them in the league. He's one that you would want. He's the guy that you would want to be able to say, like, if he's on your fourth line, you're doing well. And in a pinch, he could be a third liner. So he's proven that. He showed with a mostly healthy season what his value is, and he can put up some points. I really appreciated his game. And then I also mentioned JJ Peterka, but you mostly covered everything with him. The developmental part of that is huge. You see the leap from last year instead of the dip that some of the sophomores took. So, yeah, those were my two kind of honorable mentions.
Alrighty. Well, that's it. That's pretty much it for the Sabres season. I mean, I don't really have anything else to really talk about. I mean, we've harped on the coaches. We really did our 3 stars for the year. I mean, did you have the biggest disappointment for the team? Any player that was the biggest disappointment for you at all?
My biggest disappointment?
Yeah. I've kind of mentioned mine earlier in the season.
I'm trying to think. Because, like, I won't call Eric Comrie the biggest disappointment. He's disappointing that he was as bad as he was, but
yeah,
you didn't expect him to be good, really. I mean, I didn't really going into this year. I'm trying to think. Victor Olofsson is kind of the same way. You don't really expect someone like him to be that great. I'm going to go with Matthias Samuelsson.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't play for a lot of the end of the season, getting hurt kind of halfway through, but he had 41 games, and during those games, he just kind of looked out of sorts. He just disappointing is probably the right word for it. He was getting beat more frequently than he was the year before. His offensive ability has never been great. He's always been more of a lockdown defenseman, but it really felt like, I don't know, it felt like when it was on his stick, it was going to stay in our zone, kind of similar to what we would see with Rasmus Ristolainen during the glory days of the drought. The
original core that we're supposed to start off with.
Yeah. So if Matthias Samuelsson becomes another Rasmus Ristolainen, that would kind of suck. That would be a disappointing outcome for him. And I don't think that this year he particularly did anything to put my mind at ease from that outcome. So,
yeah. No, it's going to be interesting about the defensive core next year, just because you have, 3 guys at least that, drafted high in the first round, and one guy is an elite defenseman in this league. The other 2 are still waiting to figure those guys out. Then you have Henry Jokiharju, he's an RFA. We both stated that we want him on the team next year, and I expect and hope him to be on this team. Then you got Kyle Clifton, Bryson. I mean, good half of the end of the season, but I mean, I don't want him back at a $1.8 million contract. So
the Sabres are like 22-11 when Jacob Bryson plays,
I know.
So
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and I don't think because he's an RFA too, they were saying on the radio, he can't come back for a lesser contract that he signed before. So it would be higher than 1.8 million.
Realistically, that stat is funny, but I don't think we play better with him in the lineup. Like, I
Well, you
think
need
that
a
we
good
have
luck
better
charm.
options. Yeah, he's our little good luck charm. Like I said earlier in the year, he's the team glue. He's got the right energy.
Yeah. So yeah, you got him, Connor Clifton. Then you got Ryan Johnson, who's down in the Amherst right now and showed up pretty well when he played up in the NHL for an extended period. So,
Yeah.
Who's the odd man out here is going to be interesting because I'm assuming that part of the reason why Ryan Johnson signed with the Sabres is that hey, you're expected to play in the NHL in a certain period because there's a lot of speculation last year if he was going to sign here or not. So. Yeah. I'm sure that was part of the conversation of getting him here too. So
I think that next year, if I'm drawing it up, Jacob Bryson is gone, and Ryan Johnson and Connor Clifton are kind of the 6 and 7, and they are in and out of the lineup with each other. And then, of course, injuries happen. Obviously, we're seeing, like you see, Jacob Bryson and Cale Clegg in the lineup right now, who were not on the roster originally. So those things happen.
So yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. You bringing up Matthias Samuelsson, I've completely forgot that he was on the team. To be totally honest with you, and I was hammering on him earlier in this season too. So, yeah, that's a good one. And then I just said Tage earlier in the show too. So Tage was kind of like my biggest disappointment. I mean, I'm not expecting him to have averaging 80, 90 points a year. I mean, I think that last year was maybe the ceiling that you get with Tage Thompson, but you don't know when this new coaching staff comes out. But hey, like 60 points, 60, 70 points, that's kind of what I expect of him as a player. And he just kind of didn't live up to it. And he never really looked comfortable on the ice at all. So that's my biggest disappointment for the season for the Sabres. I guess we'll just we'll throw out some names for some coaches that you heard about. So we talked about Lindy Ruff. Joe DiBiase, I was listening to him again too. He has a strong feeling it's Rob Brindamore, who's currently the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. He has a feeling that Kevin Adams knows he can get Rob Brindamore, which it's crazy to think that because he's brought the Hurricanes to the playoffs every year that he's been there. The Hurricanes actually have a strong ownership group that isn't afraid to spend money. Do you even think Rob Brindamore is even an option for the Sabres at all?
For one, no, I don't think that Rob Brindamore is an option for the Sabres.
Yeah.
And expanding on that, I'm not sure he's an option I would like. The thing about Rob Brindamore is his system that he uses is very defensive. I would be looking with the personnel, with the players that we have, I would be looking for someone who's maybe a little more offensive minded. You have a bunch of skilled guys, and if you let them score like we saw last year, they can do some pretty exciting things. Obviously, you need to still play defense, but the system overall should be more geared on applying pressure, stealing pucks, and turning them up ice rather than just kind of a trap game where you're playing it slow, lulling the other team, and striking kind of by just creating shots more than anything. So I don't like that fit for our team. And also I know that we can assume that he and Jeff Skinner don't exactly have the greatest relationship for how he was kind of driven out of there. Yeah. So I'm not sure how nice he would play with some of the younger guys. It's maybe not a great fit in my opinion.
No. I kind of agree with that too. And I just don't understand. He played for the Carolina Hurricanes, won a Stanley Cup there. Why would he want to leave that? I understand him and Kevin Adams they played with each other for 7+ years, but I mean, that's such a loose connection. I think the biggest thing too that the next coach has to do too is specifically for the defense is just get rid of the zone defensive scheme and just play man defensive schemes. It seems that these players struggle with the zone concept, and getting it back to man may dumb it down for these players, and it could be better for the team overall when it plays defense. Another coach being brought up, Craig Berube. Any thoughts on him? He brought St. Louis to the Stanley Cup, won that, and then kind of flamed out pretty fast after that. But biggest thing that they preach about him is keeps his players accountable. You know, I think he's a little bit more of a defensive scheme coach too, just because
Yeah,
that's
but
St.
they,
Louis
they
team.
definitely played a little more offense than Carolina does.
Carolina, yeah,
But yeah, I think that I wouldn't be horribly opposed to that idea. Obviously, he won recently.
yeah,
He's someone who can rally a team well. They were not a good team before they had him. Again, there's the whole they were at the bottom of the league, and there's a asterisk there with how many games they played.
yeah,
But they were at the bottom of the league, and they rallied back in January after firing the coach and make the playoffs, and then they go on a hot streak, and then they win the cup. Like, he might be a guy where you for 1 or 2 years say, hey, you won a cup, like maybe on a short leash, because he did flame out and that team kind of fell apart quickly. They were older though,
yeah.
so like maybe that had a part in it. But that's a guy that you could definitely look at and be like, this is an option, and I would not be too upset with that outcome.
Okay. Gerard Gallant, another name.
We talked about him. He has a great record as a coach. He's almost won something. He has not officially, I don't believe. He's got the Jack Adams under his belt. The one thing that came out from New York that was kind of problematic with him and would be problematic on our team as well is that he does not play well with the young guys. He's not great at development, and that's something that you need to balance with this team, because yeah, you can't say the excuse that you're a young team. You can't use that as an excuse, but there are still players that you want to develop so that they can hit their ceiling rather than just forcing them to play exactly in a box. That was an issue that they were having in New York with Lafreniere. They move on from Gerard Gallant, and all of a sudden Lafreniere is playing very well. It took him a second to recover from playing under Gallant, but he was being labeled a bust, and now you do not see that anymore with Gallant gone. So I'm not sure if you want to introduce that with players like Benson, Owen Power, even like JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn, guys who might be coming up like Kulich, Savoy, Rosine. That might not be the healthiest environment for those guys, especially mentioning we're kind of expecting that crop of guys to be up soon.
Yeah. Capo Caco, he's still on the Rangers, right?
And he's Capo Caco is still on the Rangers.
And he's generally, him and Lafreniere were considered like two big busts, right? Because they're 1 and 2 overall.
Yep, and that was what was kind of feeding to the like, oh, Gerard Gallant's not great for these guys. Capo Caco did not necessarily have the best year this year either. So that's still yet to be seen, whether that's him or coaching. But I wouldn't be too surprised if he sees a change of scenery relatively soon.
I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of I mean, I hated him as a coach when the Sabres faced him in the playoffs. But not having Peter Laviolette available kind of sucks. He would be a good option for the Sabres, to be totally honest with you, because he does play. I mean, he brings most of his teams to the playoffs and pretty deep into them, and he's pretty good defensively and are pretty good at developing players too, but also works well with veterans. So kind of sucks that we don't have him as an option. He would probably be on the top of our board when it comes to there. I guess the last time we'll talk about, because I kind of actually warmed up to him a little bit, because I think we kind of had this conversation a few weeks ago. Like, the next coach might not be the coach that brings you to win the Stanley Cup, but brings you into the playoffs. And I was thinking about this guy because this guy has a good track record of bringing players to the playoffs, but I was kind of turned off by a story with him and Wayne Gretzky. Bruce Boudreau. He's an option out there. Kind of been out of the league for a little bit. Overall, do you think that's an option you would be warmed up to with Bruce Boudreau at all?
Yeah, I could definitely live with Bruce Boudreau. His last team was the The Vancouver Canucks, where he was kind of unceremoniously dispatched. And I don't know how that kind of affects his reputation, but he's a fan of the game. He loves hockey. He's constantly thinking about it. He's seems to be well liked by all the players. There was definitely a certain level of adoration that Canucks team had for him and openly vocalized as they knew he was going out. That team did take a pretty harsh dip in the last year that he was there, but he was when they first put him on to the team, he definitely was getting great results for them. So, every team does, or every coach kind of has their expiration date with a team, and I think he hit theirs. I would be happy with Bruce Boudreau. That is one that I would also take.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. And then there's some other names out there, but we'll talk about this in a later week. But you hear about Jay Woodcroft from the Oilers. People are bringing up. I'm not the biggest fan of that.
Yeah.
Still, people are. I mean, from the press conference, it doesn't sound like these would be options, but some people are still hyping on like the Michael Pekka type of thing or the Steve Ott. I'll be honest with you. I think a couple of years ago, I was banging on the doors like, I want a new face to be the head coach of our team when it came to Phil Housley, Ralph Kruger, and Don Granato. And I was like, I'm kind of sick of the boys club when it comes to coaches being recycled in the throughout the NHL. But I think this time around, we need a recycled coach that can take the teams to the playoffs. So it would be great to have a Michael Pekka or Steve Ott when they have a little bit more experience at this point. But I mean, you see some guys come out with no experience and end up coaching the team pretty well, a la Rob Brendan. So, yeah, we'll get more into coaching when it comes to the rest of this season. And then kind of what we'll do at the end of the show, kind of closing out, just kind of with our plans for the show going forward as the offseason begins for the Sabres. One thing is, it's not the offseason for the Rochester Americans because they clinched a playoff spot. And I think the last game, Yuri Kulik had a hat trick. So that dip that he had after the World Juniors for about 2 months, he's kind of back on a hot streak. And Rosine has been playing pretty well too. And then Wahlberg's come in and just, like we mentioned last week, fitting in pretty well. So we'll be talking about the Amherst and their run in the playoffs because what do we keep on talking about this team and the plethora that they have are prospects. So we'll talk about that. Is there anything you have to take away from just the Amherst so far this season? Or what people should look out for?
One of the things that you'll see around the Sabres is the future is bright, right? You got the young team, but also you got a lot of prospects. So we're going to continue talking about those guys because it's worthwhile to look at them and see what's going on with your prospects. I was looking around and I watched some of the game, the most recent game, and they absolutely trashed the Belleville Senators. That was fun to see. They've secured their spot into the playoffs, and they're actually fighting for the divisional title right now. So they're still jostling for position there. But yeah, that's something fun to watch. And you got guys that are worth looking at, I think. You got Yuri Kulik, Isak Rosian, Victor Neuchev came out during the second half of the season and has looked very good.
Yep.
Nikita Novikov. You got Ryan Johnson. Matt Savoy is probably going to be in Rochester after his playoff run is done with Moose Jaw, but we can also, during our streams, talk about them. I know that they started 1-1 against their second round opponent in the WHL playoffs. Yeah, we've got Anton Wahlberg. We might see a fellow Swede. Oh, what's his name?
Osland?
He was drafted. Osland, yeah.
Yeah.
Noah Osland. I wanted to call him Josh. I was like, why do I have Josh in my...
Josh Allen, baby.
Fellow Swede Noah Osland might make his way over. And then you got Devin Levi. So there's a lot of prospects worth watching. And so we intend to keep you guys a little bit up to date on what's going on with them in the event that, you can't watch the AHL TV because it is expensive. And while I'm on this Rochester page, you want to play a fun game? Because we love plus minus games.
Yeah.
So noted NHLer Lukáš Rusek has played 48 games in the A. What do you think his plus minus is?
I have a feeling you're asking me this question because Rusek, he's kind of projected to be a fourth line guy, solid defensively, but I think I'm going to start thinking the opposite for this guy. So I'm going to say a minus 12.
So he's -8. I just thought that, we've Lukáš Rusek's a good baseline because you've seen him play.
Yeah.
Right? For the NHL team. You know what his game is. You know what he's got. He's got 38 points in the AHL. He's -8 right now. So it wasn't necessarily the greatest defensive season for him. But, -8 isn't the worst on our team right now. Now I'm going to ask you, who do you think has the best plus minus? Because I think that this is the actual fun. I used Lukáš Rusek just kind of as the framing of that's a player on the team. The average is probably around 0, but that's a player you've seen play. He's at -8. Who do you think has the best plus minus on the team?
This is a notable prospect that we've been talking about, correct? It's not just a random AHL player.
No, it's not a random AHL player.
Yeah.
I'll have you know he is, I believe, 19. So it's a guy that you're looking to see develop and get better.
Okay, that changes things because I was going to say somebody else. No, it's not going to be Novikov, is it? No, it's. No, won't be. Is it Yuri Kulik?
No, it's Novikov.
Oh,
I might have gotten the age wrong there.
I can't remember if he might have started the season at 18 and might have turned 19.
Oh, he's 20 now. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So Nikita Novikov at age 20 in the AHL has 23 points and is plus 19. So he's rookie season. Still a very young guy. Defensemen can often take a little bit of time. Yeah. He's hopped right into the North American game and seems to really be putting his foot on the gas. And I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. I did not expect that from him. I don't know how he's being utilized. I don't know how many minutes he's getting every night, but
I don't think he's averaging that many minutes, though. I think he's he might be a second pair defenseman, if I've read that correctly from somebody.
Yeah, but it still seems like with the minutes that he has, he's doing pretty well for himself.
It's interesting because, the Sabres went all in a few years ago on Russian players, these KHL players, and then with the whole situation with what's going on in Russia, you kind of get blacked out from these prospects. So last year we had no idea what Novikov and Neuchev were bringing over. And who's the third Russian that's on the team too?
On the AHL team?
He might not even be on the AHL team.
Because there was a guy who was going, he's in college.
Okay.
Who was at the prospects tournament, and he has a Russian name, but I forget what it is. It's maybe Sardarian.
Okay. No, it wasn't that. I'm looking at the Kisakov is the other guy.
Oh, Kisakov, yeah.
Yeah.
He's been in Rochester for 2 years now, I think.
Yeah. So he's been the one that's been there the longest. And then you have Prokhor Poltavov that's over in Russia too, which when the Sabres drafted him, he was a big name for I felt like there was a big get for the Sabres in the second round. So you don't really hear much about him. Chris Baker kind of keeps you up to date on that. But supposedly, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. He plays a different tenacity type of game when it comes to what the Sabres need, more of an agitator type player. So, yeah. No, it's good to see. What were we talking about earlier in the season? Sabres don't have defensive prospects. Now you got Ryan Johnson. You have Novikov down there too. So, and then look at their
you have a logjam of probably real NHL defensemen. Which, before we had a logjam of tweeners, it was you have
Stillman
at the bottom. You have Stillman, Bryson, and Clegg.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, that's tough. Now they're only call-ups and not like actually are 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
So that's nice. Like that's a nice place to be in where you can see the visible progress of like you're pushing these guys further back the lineup just by or by like acquisitions and by development. So it's
Drafting and
nice.
developing, which I mean, it's great to see from the Sabres. At least they're making good picks, and these picks are developing into possible good NHL players. So, I mean, hat tip to Kevin Adams on that because I think a lot of people complained that his drafting style when he drafted Jack Quinn was, oh, he's doing only best player available type of drafting, and that doesn't work out. But hell, when you're the worst team in the league, you got to draft that way, and it's been working out for them. So yeah, we'll be talking about the Amherst and their run because last year they made it into the semifinals, and they lost to Hershey, which I was just looking at Hershey, and I believe they're at the top of just the AHL right now at 109 points. So they're best in the division by 20 points because Providence is 89 points.
I think similar to last year, though, the thing about Hershey Bears, they have an elite AHL team.
Yeah.
They do not have elite prospects. And so that's why you can look at them and be like, yeah, it's cool that they're doing well, but I still would not trade our current AHL team for theirs.
Yeah, I'm looking at their roster right now. I really don't know anybody of note when it comes to their prospects. Who are they the affiliate with?
They are affiliated with the Washington Capitals, so I guess
that's true.
It makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they brought out a
and they graduated a few players, such as honestly, like they're Connor McMichael.
Yeah.
They had another one like Potros. Even then he was not that notable, and they were like 24 when they were coming up, so like they were older prospects, and they were the guys that Washington had to look forward to. So yeah, I'm not too bent out of shape that you lost to an elite AHL team because that's a bunch of guys who are probably tweeners and aren't actual NHLers and won't become them. So yeah, it's a learning experience, and I would rather have my Yuri Kulik's, Isaac Rosines, and Victor Neuchevs.
Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on in the AHL. So yeah, follow that, guys, because that's promising. I mean, that's positive for the Sabres in the future there. We talk about this all season, so we'll be talking about that. We'll obviously be talking about the World, so obviously we know Dahlin's in it right now. Hoping more Sabres get into that. We'll talk about that. We'll have conversations about that. We'll talk about coaching, what the coaching search is bringing up, and guys that we're interested in. I'm sure I'm going to be doing my research this upcoming week on people who are rumored to the Sabres. And then we'll talk about the draft a little bit too. I mean, getting too far into NHL prospects is tough. So we'll get the draft lottery in a couple weeks from now. First week of the playoffs, we'll get that to see what position that they're in. Right now, Sabres are slotted in at 11, but there's still a lottery chance that they can get the first overall pick, or even move up. What is their percentage at? I think it's less than 5. I think it's around
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, kind of hoping they trade that pick so they can get a package that with a prospect and get a better player. Yeah, and once that, we'll talk about the draft of the Sabres. I know drafting the player, free agency comes up as well. I think the biggest thing too is we're going to go weekly up until the end of May, beginning of June, and after that, we're kind of going to hit a every other week type of show, just because NHL is not like the NFL. There's not a lot to talk about when it comes to that. And this was a tiring season for Sam and I. I mean, you saw me let it out last week and a couple weeks ago. So kind of need some rest from the Sabres, take a break away from this. So that's kind of what the plan from there. Is there anything else that I missed at all, Sam, about that?
No, I think that roughly that's the plan. Obviously, yeah, as you mentioned, it's been a bit of a taxing season. This team hasn't really inspired us to want to come out every week and talk about them, but here we were doing it. And even on the weeks where you get out and you're like, well, we've lost the last 4 games, You still gotta show up and do this. So it's
accountability.
yeah. There's gonna be that lull in content anyway. So it's gonna be nice to have a little bit of a lighter schedule for us, I think, and it'll make us it so that when we are live, we have more energy to give you guys, and more it's not just always rehashing the same topics, so we're not getting on every day and being like, so what trade would you make, what roster move would you make, and it's the same thing as last week, but like,
Yeah.
So it should help avoid a little bit of that. But we are thankful for everyone who supported us throughout the whole season. I know it's been a tough one to watch. I know there's been a lot of anger and rage along the way, and a lot of having to make peace with all of that. But we do look forward to what comes next in the next season. We look forward to getting to kind of shift the show, to change and let you guys know what's coming up for the Sabres. What do they have in the pipeline? What do we think of the prospects? It's gonna be fun to speculate more, because we've been doing a lot of just telling you what's happened, but we're gonna have an off season to talk about who do you think we should draft, who do you think we should trade for, who do you think we should get as a coach. So that pivot's going to be fun for us, and I look forward to doing that with you guys. But yeah, that's about it for what's coming up for us.
Yeah. So everybody, got some homework. Bring up who you want as coaches. Put it in the comments so we can talk about that next week. And any other information or anything else that you want to talk about, either, prospects wise, guys you want to focus on, or just the AHL in general, because we'll talk about that as well. But before we close the show, Sam, playoffs are about to start. Who do you got as your Stanley Cup finalist and then your winner? So who's going to be in there? Who's going to win it all?
Okay, so this is more of a what I would like to see rather than what I think will happen, just based on teams that are in the playoffs and that I like. I would take from the West, because that's easier for me. I don't like picking a team from the East. Let's be honest here. It's tough. It's painful. Yeah. From the West, I would like to see the Canucks or the Oilers win. At this point, now that Jack's gone and has been for a while, I've got no feeling of like competitiveness towards the Oilers and Connor McDavid, and honestly just think he deserves one at this point. He's been the best player in the league for several years. His brand of hockey is so much fun to watch. Just as a fan of the sport, you tune on a game that McDavid's in, and he's electric. So much fun. So got to give the Oilers a shout. Got to give the Canucks a shout. They are our expansion cousin, our sisters in misery. They have been through the same 50 years of not winning cups.
Yeah. And
I like the team. I do. I think that Quinn Hughes is fun. Elias Pettersson. And this year they really figured it out. They are where we kind of had hoped we would be with our players developing. Although it didn't necessarily happen. Like, I kind of see us in their reflection.
Yeah.
So that's a team I'd love to see have success as kind of a template for, hey, this is what we could be doing. And so that's who I'd want to see come out of the Pacific. And from the West, I guess. I just picked specific teams. From the East, I would I'm looking at the available teams, and it seems that the Flyers are out, the Capitals and the Red Wings are in. I guess maybe the Red Wings could be usurped, but no. Capitals and Red Wings are in, Flyers are out. That is how it shaped up.
No, Red Wings are out. Capitals in. That's it.
Capitals and Red Wings are in. Is it not?
No, Red Wings are out. Washington got in. It shows right here.
Oh, shoot. You're right. Yeah. I didn't realize there was only one spot. I thought it was two. I forget that the Lightning are a wild card team.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Capitals are in, which means the Red Wings are out, which kind of suck on that.
Nice. Yeah. Screw you guys.
No, we're not petty. We're not petty here.
I am. I am.
Oh, I hate all of these teams. God, it's so hard to pick from It's very, very hard to pick from kind of your conference because we got the Bruins, Panthers, Maple Leafs, Lightning, which, ew,
Yeah.
gross. Or on the other side, you got Rangers, Hurricanes, Islanders, Capitals. Maybe the Capitals with their minus 37. Imagine how funny that would be. So my ideal finals is the Capitals versus the McDavids, and I probably want to see the McDavids win. And if not the McDavids, then I would like to see it be the Canucks.
So this is your emotional feeling. What do you think is really going to happen?
Honestly, the Pacific could happen, as I said, but we all know that Vegas is going to get Mark Stone and that one defenseman back, and they're gonna light it up, and they're gonna obviously easily cleave through everyone to win their back-to-back cup.
Yeah,
and probably the Rangers make it out. They look good.
They do.
I hate it, but
President's Cup.
Or the President's Trophy curse might hold them back, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. I guess it's my turnaround. So, kind of in the same feeling with you. I mean, I would love to see Vancouver. I'd love to see Edmonton. Just fun, exciting teams. I mean, even Winnipeg too. I wouldn't mind seeing Winnipeg as well. I mean, I think the joke's been around with American teams have been winning the cup over Canadians. When was the last time a Canadian team won a Stanley Cup? I'm kind of over that right now. It'd be kind of cool to see a Canadian team win a Stanley Cup. It'd be cool to see Vancouver win their first or Edmonton win 1-2 as well. And even Winnipeg. I mean, one of those three teams to win a cup would be amazing. So I like all three of those teams.
I feel like Winnipeg is like the least offensive option.
Yeah.
If Winnipeg wins the cup, I feel like everyone will be like, oh, okay. That's all
good
right.
for them.
Yeah, like do they even have like a rival?
I don't think so. I think the only rival that they have is with the NHL because the NHL wants to keep on moving them out of there. So
yeah, but they would love to keep a team in Arizona apparently. But that actually just a little side tangent. The Arizona Coyotes are no more. They are moving to Utah. So they're being sold to the owner of the Jazz, I believe it is. So goodbye, Arizona. As hard as you tried to keep in the state, you are no longer a Arizona team. Although I did hear that Gary Bettman was telling the current owner of the Coyotes that if he can secure a building in Arizona within the next 4 years, they can be the next expansion team. So they might make their triumphant return, but without all the progress that they've been making towards the drafting and development, because they have some good pieces in place.
Yeah.
And now Utah has some good pieces in place.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I used to hate the Coyotes logo back in the day when I was younger. I love that logo, and seeing that logo leave is going to be hurtful.
It's great. It
is an amazing logo. And I mean, the NHL has the best jerseys out of any sport, period. The best logos overall. So it sucks that we're going to lose that. I don't think it's going to be the Utah Coyotes. It's kind of going to be something with like Yetis or something lame like that. Coyotes got to stay in Arizona. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, what if just Winnipeg moves to Arizona again? Because that can happen again to that franchise.
Yeah.
That was tough to see. Tough to hear. But who do I think is going to make it out of the West? Boring hockey, Dallas Stars. I mean, they've been on a heater. They're one of those defensive teams. They have a great goaltender, not really big goal scorers. And they came in a heater at them this season. So I feel like Dallas might be their year to make the Stanley Cup out of the West. I'm in the same predicament as you in the East. I hate Boston. I hate Toronto. I hate the Rangers. I hate the Islanders. Tampa Bay, just die, please. Just die. Washington, really just die. So I named every team except for the Florida Panthers, and I mean, it's Miami, basically Miami. I don't like Miami.
I despise Nick Cousins. He might be one
That's
of my
other thing
least
too.
favorite players in the whole league. I'm like, I can't root for this team.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I
I
love
want,
Sam
yeah, I
Reinhart.
want Sam Reinhart to win, and somehow Florida not. Like,
Yeah,
can they trade him real quick?
yeah, and I mean, Okposo. I mean, he was loyal to the Sabres and
Yeah,
whatever.
how can you root against him really?
Yeah, and I like Ekblad too as well. I mean, I guess. Yeah, I really don't like Cousins either, and I hate that they're in Miami. I don't like Florida teams winning. I mean, this might be the most boring NHL final because what if I just say Carolina?
Yeah, the Stars versus Carolina, riveting content.
I mean, that would just tank the NHL final standing. So the fix would have to be in to be like, hey, we got to up the goal scoring in this finals because we can't have these two defensive teams facing each other. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess what I think it's gonna. So I do think it is actually going to be Carolina. Yeah, I don't even
Yeah.
have a team that I like to make it to be a
Yeah,
title.
I'm not gonna watch the Carolina versus Stars final. I don't think.
No, me either. It's just gonna be a snooze fest. So, yeah, that's it. So, and then yeah, Jake mentioned for Winnipeg, we do have a rooting interest locally because we have Alex I follow on on that team. So,
Yep.
from I think he's from Hamburg. He's from Hamburg. And then yeah, Mike brought up the Utah Elks. That would be interesting too. A lot of people have been playing around with the Mormon theme too. Like, I don't know what you would name that team. But the jerseys would be like a black tie and a white.
Hear me out. The Salt Lake Saints.
I do like that too, because that could be a good logo. Don't make it the New Orleans Saints logo. Make it like an actual cool logo.
And apparently it's Eden. So
Same thing. They're right next to each other. So yeah, those are our Stanley Cup Finals picks. Who I think is gonna win? Who I'd like to win would probably be. I would like to see McDavid win a Stanley Cup. So out of my if it was Edmonton versus Carolina, obviously Edmonton gets McDavid a cup. If it's Carolina and Dallas, I'll take Dallas. I mean, I don't know. That's like picking between, I don't even know, boring and more boring. I mean, neither of those franchises deserve a Stanley Cup before the Sabres again. So, yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts. I mean, I really ended the show on a dud when it came to my pick for the Stanley Cup.
That's okay. That's okay. You know what?
Yeah.
The Sabres season ended on a dud anyway, so you're fitting a theme here.
Yeah. But so like you mentioned, we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about hopefully some more news on the coaching search. And I think this is an hour and a half show. We're gonna try to break this down to be at least below an hour, maybe around 30-minute shows coming up after this. So there'll be short little quick ones for you guys. So I don't think, Sam, you have anything else to bring up at all?
No, just kind of a general thank you to everyone who's supported us throughout the season. Thank you to Mike, who runs the channel, and apparently happy birthday to Mike.
Yeah.
Everyone who's just watched along and cheered for us and the Sabres this season. We appreciate you and that support. It's been awesome hanging out with you guys. Not necessarily been an awesome season, but yeah, it's been at least fun along the way. So thank you so much for that and just supporting us in the channel.
Yeah, appreciate all of you guys. So thank you again for joining us on the show. Please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel if you're not. And we'll talk to you next week with hopefully some more coaching news. Anyways, have a good night, everyone.